Good morning, children. I hope all of you are safe, and I am extremely happy to meet you all with the lesson The Midnight Visitor by Robert Arthur. You find this lesson in your supplementary reader, Footprints Without Feet. The theme of the lesson is we should never judge a person by his appearance, as it is said that we should not judge a book by its cover. The Midnight Visitor is an interesting story, isn't it? The title is very interesting. Generally, who visits in the midnight? Obviously, people with wrong intention, maybe robbers. It's a very fascinating story about a secret agent. I hope you must have already read the story. If not, you should read the story. Reading the original story is very important, not only to understand the story, but also to enjoy the language used by the author. Now, let us move on to know about the author of the story. Robert Arthur Jr. was an American writer of mystery and speculative fiction. His fame rests on The Mysterious Traveler, a radio series, and his Three Investigators series of novels. His stories were published in many magazines between 1930 and 1940. He also wrote mystery books for children. He was twice honored by the Mystery Writers of America with his writing partner Edgar. He died in 1969 in Philadelphia. Students, this is just for your information. It's always good to know some information about the author of the stories. You always have the habit of knowing about the author, and you are also advised to read a few more stories written by the same author. Now we move on to introduction to the lesson, The Midnight Visitor. You know, every lesson is prescribed in your textbooks with a specific purpose. There are lessons to be learned from the lesson, and there are values to be learned for our life. So let us look at every lesson with such a focus. Let us learn, let us know what we are going to learn from this lesson. To introduce this lesson to you, first we have a character called Ausable. He is a secret agent. He is expecting to get an important paper about missiles. Max, an intruder, a rival of Ausable, enters his room. He wants to get that paper from Ausable. He has a pistol in his hand. Ausable, being a quiet but smart and shrewd secret agent, plays upon a trick on Max and gets him killed without any physical fighting and shooting. So this is a brief introduction about the lesson, The Midnight Visitor. Now we move on to important characters in the story. Once we become familiar with the characters, then it will be easier for you to understand, to follow the story and to understand the story. We have Ausable, one who plays a main role in the story. He is a secret agent, lives in France, but he doesn't present such a romantic picture of a detective. He was very fat and sloppy, but mentally he was very agile and quick-witted. We have another important character, Fowler, a young romantic writer. He is preparing to publish a story on the life of detectives. So, we move on to the third important character of the story, Max, another secret agent said to be a rival of Ausable, and he was a little less than tall, appeared crafty and has a countenance of a fox. So now we have learnt a bit about three important characters of the story, the Midnight Visitor. To take you further, I would like to invite you to take a close glance at the entire story. We are going into detail of the story. So, as I have titled here, The Midnight Visitor at a Glance. The theme of the story, The Midnight Visitor, is a very thrilling account of a secret agent, Ausable's one particular episode. Ausable, surprisingly, didn't fit any description of a secret agent. He didn't live up to the romantic picture of a secret agent that we read in books or see in films. I guess you understand. But he was found to be rather fat and sloppy, and he lived in a very small room on the 6th floor of a shabby hotel. However, Ausable was gifted with a rare presence of mind. Students, you are going to understand what we mean by this. Ausable was gifted with rare presence of mind. You know, students, young students, all of you should be gifted with such rare presence of mind. Let us move on with the main points of the story. Ausable's fertile brain could invent and cook up stories and situations that would confuse and unnerve his rivals. Please, let us read the sentence again. Ausable was blessed with such a fertile brain, he could invent and cook up stories and situations that would confuse and unnerve his rivals easily. Here, he cooked up the story of the balcony below the window of his room and the arrival of the police. Ausable outwitted and outsmarted his rival and enemy secret agent Max, who had come to take away a very important document concerning some new missiles. Through his presence of mind, Ausable was able to get rid of his rival Max. As we said earlier, he was able to get rid of his rival without any physical fighting or without using any weapon. So this is what we have just had a look at, a glance at the lesson, The Midnight Visitor. Now we move on to, for further recapitulation, we move on to the main points of the story. To begin with, Fowler was a young and romantic writer, as you are already familiar with him. He had come to meet Ausable, a secret agent, because he wanted to write a story for a magazine on detectives, life of detectives. Ausable was a detective in Paris who was fat and sloppy and hardly looked like a secret agent. When Ausable switched on the light, as they were about to enter the room, he found Max standing with a pistol in his hand across the room. Max had come to take a particularly important report concerning missiles forcibly from Ausable. Sensing the situation, Ausable cooked up a false story to entrap crafty Max. Students, I hope you follow the story. We are continuing with the main points of the story for better understanding. Ausable told Max that the balcony below his window had become a big nuisance. It was the second time in a month that somebody got into his room through the balcony. He also made Max panicky by telling him that the knockings at the door were of the police, whom he had already informed, because he thought that it would be good enough to have extra security for such important papers about missiles. When Max became panicky, he came to the window and jumped out of it. A loud cry was heard and in this way Ausable got rid of his crafty enemy, because there was no balcony at all. Later on, it was found that the knockings at the door were made by the hotel waiter, who entered the room with a bottle of a drink and 2 glasses as ordered by Ausable. Students, this is how the story comes to an end. Now, we have come to another important part of the lesson. As I said in the beginning, every lesson is prescribed with a specific purpose for young learners. So let us look at the lessons to be learnt from this prescribed story, The Midnight Visitor by Robert Arthur. As you can see, you all may agree with me, wisdom is more powerful than weapon. Hope you understand the meaning of the sentence. And we should think quickly and act wisely and calmly in the face of adverse and dangerous situations. Let me read it again. We should think quickly and act wisely and calmly in the face of adverse and dangerous situations. Students, we move on to another important sentence. Presence of mind comes out of mental preparedness. These are simply worded sentences, so hope you understand the real meaning of it. When we are mentally prepared well, we can use our presence of mind more effectively. And another important sentence we have here, never judge a person by his appearance. Students, you may be familiar with another well-known statement, never judge a book by its cover. So here, we should never judge a person by his appearance. So these are the lessons, these are the important lessons we learn from this lesson, and when you read the story, you may learn more out of it. Here, just to give you some more information, since we are reading about detectives in the story, The Midnight Visitor, I have listed a few well-known, renowned investigative agencies both in India and abroad. Here, we have Research and Analysis Wing, known as RAW in India, Intelligence Bureau, shortly known as IB, India, National Investigative Agency, NIA, again an Indian premier investigative agency, and we have Central Bureau of Investigation, CBI, India, an American agency, Federal Bureau of Investigation, shortly known as FBI, and Inter-Services Intelligence, ISI, another investigation agency in Pakistan. This is just for your information, and you can explore further with the help of Google to know more investigative agencies of different countries. So children, I always remind you, you should not end with learning only this story. And whenever we read a story, we should read some more stories written by the same author and stories of the same type written by other authors also, and we should gather more information. So gathering information should always take place. Now I take you to the next slide, where I have just brought 5 important story books, a few detective, mysterious, adventurous stories for further reading. Children, I tell you, this is not a complete list. As you know very well, this is not a complete list, only very few. Just for example, I have included here The Treasure House by Linda Newberry, Dead Man's Cove by Lauren St. John, The London Eye Mystery by Siobhan Dowd, Diamonds and Daggers by Lynn Galtech, The Secret of the Night Train by Sylvia Bishop. This is not the complete list. There are many more books. So you all should read many books. Now I have Another a small list of stories suggested for further reading. This list is found in your textbook, Footprints Without Feet. A story, After 20 Years by O. Henry, The Stolen Bacillus by H. G. Wells, The Face on the Wall by E. V. Lucas. This is a list of suggested reading. Children, you are advised to read these stories too. Again, I have a very short list of words with meaning. Again, this is not a complete list. Students, please understand, this is not a complete list. When you read the story, you will come across many more words, and you should learn as many words as possible with the help of a good standard dictionary. Here we have a small list of words: romantic, imaginative, having a fantastic view of reality, possibly, just well enough, tolerably well, espionage, spying, sloppy, very carelessly dressed, as it means here in this context of this story, prosaic, ordinary, chuckled, laughed quietly without opening his mouth, wheezed, spoke breathing noisily and heavily, missiles, weapons directed by remote control or automatically, shrilly, piercingly in a high pitch. So as I said earlier, when you read the story, please collect at least 20 unfamiliar words from the lesson, and with the help of a dictionary, make yourself familiar with these words, so that vocabulary enrichment continues to be a process. Next, I move on to one question I have assigned here for your homework and to test your understanding. It helps you to test your writing skill too. Presence of mind and intelligence are more powerful than a gun. How far is it true in the case of Ausable, the secret agent? Elaborate, highlighting the values possessed by Ausable. This question is to be answered in 120 words. This question has to be taken for homework and for assessment. You can answer this question by taking inputs from the lesson and adding your own views too. Hope you all will answer this question and submit to your teacher. Now, I have taken information from different sources, and I would like to acknowledge all these sources. Teacher's Manual for Formative Assessment for class 10, published by CBSE, prescribed textbook, NCERT book, Footprints Without Feet, authentic website, diksha.gov.in, and of course, google.com for collecting all relevant information. And further, I have also used open sources available in YouTube videos. In addition, I have also collected information from different other sources. I acknowledge all those sources at this moment. Before I conclude, a small note to my dear young learners: learning does not end here. Always go beyond the text. You should always travel an extra mile to read and relish more such stories written by celebrated authors around the globe. Let reading become your irresistible habit. Read more and more. Great thoughts shared by greatest minds in their books will certainly take you further and farther to greater heights in your life. Children, I hope you have enjoyed this lesson. You should read the original story. If you don't understand in the first reading, please read again. Understand the story. In addition to what we have discussed now, you can collect more information from the original story when you read the text by yourself. And don't stop there. Go on to read some more stories, some more similar stories with a similar theme, and enjoy reading. Hope this session was found to be useful to you. Happy learning.